What's up, everybody? It's freezing cold here in Central Florida today. I think it is a cool 49 degrees, which for me is absolutely ridiculous. We're surviving and we're still making videos for you, my people. In front of me is the Exmark Staris. This is the stand between version of, you know, the TORO Exmark company stander. So this is their version of a stander. They used to have a very similar stander to the Grandstand, and then Exmark wanted to differentiate, and so they wanted to have the stand between model, and so they completely re-engineered it, redesigned it. This is what they came up with because they wanted to be different. They wanted to have something other than the Grandstand, and I think TORO, because TORO owns Exmark, wanted to have both sides of the market. They wanted to have a great stand between, and they wanted to have a great stand behind. Those are the kind of the different names between the standards, right? You have stand between and stand behind. I've seen a lot of people talk about the differences between the Grandstand and the Staris, and it's interesting to hear everyone's opinion, because I have some opinions too, and maybe I see them in a different way than you see them. Because I'm a dealership, I run a repair shop, so I get to see these little issues that come up. And so I really do want you guys to know and understand the differences between them, because I do think the Grandstand is better. But I don't wish ill upon Exmark, and if you own an Exmark, I'm sure you have a good product that does a good job. But at the same time, there are some funny design things about this that I think we should just clarify, and that maybe you guys at home want to see the difference. If you're shopping, should I buy an Exmark or should I buy a TORO? Here are some things to know about the Exmark before you buy one. Check it out. So here is a Staris. This is the sister to the Grandstand, but they are like stepsisters, totally unrelated, almost share none of the same genes except for spindle-ish. Other than that, it's pretty much its own thing. Has its own hydros, has its own deck system, has its own frame, has its own way to mount its engine, its own way to mount its deck, its own way of lifting its deck. It has hard lines everywhere. The hydraulics are above the engine. There's so many differences between this and a Grandstand, and I just wanted to go over them and talk about it for a minute, because a few videos ago I said that the TORO Grandstand is the best all-arounder for a landscaper who isn't doing like enormous acreage, who's doing normal residences. And some people said, no, the Staris is better. And so I wanted to talk about the differences between the Staris and the Grandstand, because personally, I still think the Grandstand is better, and I want to give you some reasons why. Check this out. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you guys is what's under the hood. So as you can see, the engine's kind of tucked back. On the TORO Grandstand, the engine's a little bit more out front. The engine on this is tucked back, and they have this big, nice, beefy cover here that kind of protects everything. But come look underneath it, and this is kind of, they've had to do a lot of stuff to make this machine so narrow and give you space to stand between, which some people want to do. So they had to come up with their own custom battery that can lay sideways. That's kind of cool that they made their own battery, but at the same time, that's kind of strange. You can't use a normal battery, and you have to buy a battery from Exmark, and I do know that these batteries are a lot more money. So that's something to think about. Look how they have to route this muffler to keep it up and out of the way. It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's very long, so there could be a lot of stress on these points here. I'm not saying that I've seen that happen, but there could be. To get to all these belts is a little more challenging than on the TORO. If you actually look at the engine, you can tell it's a lot harder to get access to. If you wanted to work on this engine, that's going to be a lot more challenging than on the TORO. The TORO is a little bit out. It's more accessible. As far as simplicity and easy to work on, I think the TORO wins in this department. But come around the back, we'll take a look at these hydros. You can see them up here. They're all above the engine, which is very unusual. Normally, hydros are all below the engine. These are your pumps, your wheel motors are down here attached to your wheels, but the pumps are actually above this Kohler, which is very interesting. They added all these hard lines, which looks really nice and professional. That's just something you don't see. I've never seen the hydros up here. And so they had to do that for room saving. They dropped the engine down, probably gives it a really nice low center of gravity. It probably does pretty good on hills. But at the same time, if these leak, they're leaking onto your engine. So let's go around the back and we'll look at the engine, and on the back side, this one, I do like the way this one folds. It folds up, stays up. Here's your hydro reservoir. Here are your hydro gear pumps. It's pretty nice how they're all plumbed in here, but it is pretty crowded in here, and and it is above your engine, like I said before. That's kind of interesting. On some of the other ones I've had, I have seen this engine that's absolutely covered with oil on top, and I think that, you know, that's because you have your hydros above it and your reservoir above it, so it's quite possible for that to happen. So it has a nice cover here you can take off. I didn't really know how to take it off, but here we go, got it off. So if you look here, this is how you have to get to your engine. If you want to take this engine out, it's more than 4 bolts, that's for sure. You got to do a lot of stuff. You can't really lift it up, you can't really go down, so you got to kind of come out. So you got to take a bunch of stuff out and off to get to it. The hydro tensioner and the hydro pulley is all attached to your engine. Look here, there's a pulley on top of your engine mounted to your flywheel. I've never seen that before. I mean, it's kind of cool. They've taken advantage of, so they're all about height savings here. They're trying to squish everything down and squish it forward. And so rather than having a pulley come off on the bottom of your crankshaft above your clutch, they've went and they added a pulley on top of their engine, under their flywheel. So that's a whole new kind of system that they created there. And they've inverted their pumps and they got them pumping off that, which is neat, but also that's just kind of one more thing you got to take off and take apart when you want to work on this thing. So design-wise, I'm impressed just with the ingenuity and the ability to think of something like that, but at the same time, it looks really challenging to work on. All these hard lines are great, and I feel like they probably last a long time, but those are all going to be, you can't go to Napa and get one of those made really quick. So that's going to be one of those things where you're going to be ordering these kind of parts if they ever did have an issue. You can only go through an Exmark dealer, so that's something else to consider. I bet repairs on your engine and reseals and that sort of thing is going to cost you more in labor on a machine like this. And that's an assumption, but if I were bidding a job and I were to bid one for this, I'm sure it would take my techs longer. The fuel tanks, you got dual fuel tanks on the sides. That's kind of like, you know, the Toro has their fuel tank inside their tower. These are on the outside because their tower is obviously packed with hydraulics and the engine and all those things. So they have their fuel tanks on the outside, and they're still pretty low in general, and I think that probably gives you a good center of gravity. The people who I have seen like that who like this Staris are generally guys who do slopes and things. But as far as the feel and the drive, like I always talk about how comfortable is something to drive and how's the responsiveness and how's the agility, and there's just some challenges that a stand between cause that a stand behind has like figured out. So they did a good job of cutting out these slots so that you have some room here. So I can't say that it's blocking your lean ability as much as some of the other stand betweens, but it definitely does not allow me to kind of, what I like to do is like slide my feet over the edge on some of these rails, and it kind of prevents you from doing that. So it kind of forces you to be inside this little pinched area, and it's fine, but I kind of do like standing on this rails, and I don't have as much mobility as I do on the Grandstand. So that's something I don't appreciate as much. It does come with solids, and they're really soft solids, which sounds kind of interesting. They're semi-pneumatic. They have air in them, but you don't have to put air in them. But they are very soft, and apparently they do wear out pretty quickly. But it probably does make for a squishy, nice, comfortable ride. And they do have a really wide and beefy looking fork, if you look here, but it has basically the same shank as the normal Grandstand. So I've never really seen the yoke bend or get damaged. So the beefiness here, though it looks really nice, I don't know if it's 100% necessary. I mean, that's like the thickest piece of metal on this whole mower. When in reality, what bends is right here. When you hit a big curb or whatever, I'd be more impressed if this was really beefy rather than this was really beefy. But I do like that they're a little wider tire. I think that's nice. And I do think that that would be convenient to have. Guys, I'm not here to knock on these and to say that the Toro wins in every single department of the stander, but it is just interesting to compare and to see some of the differences if you haven't seen before. The braking system is very similar. It's just a very physical brake. If you watch here, you can watch this pop up and down. You see that? So I like that. I think that's just simple. It's less likely to really fail on you. It might not work as your tire goes down. You might have to adjust it and lower that down, but something simple like that I do appreciate. And the tires on these are pretty big. If you look at that, that's a 23, 10, 5, 12. That's a big tire on a stander. That looks really nice and gives it a really aggressive kind of feel to it. And the styling on this thing is absolutely incredible. I mean, it looks great. I think they knocked it out of the park with the look of it. But as far as actual usability, some of the maintenance pieces of it look a little challenging and a little frustrating as a technician to work on this. But really, I want to spend some time mowing with it. And even if the grass isn't really growing right now, we still have some grass, and I'm just gonna ride around with the blades on and do some turns and see what it feels like doing stripes with it, really just going back and forth and just getting some mow time with it while I have one in the building. And so watch some of that and check it out, and I'll make some comments at the end about how it feels compared to a Grandstand as far as actually riding it and mowing with it, because I haven't mowed too much with the Staris, to be honest. I've just seen them and I've worked on them a little bit. So let's go give some mow time on this bad boy. Honestly, I think it kicked butt. Mowed pretty good. I don't know if the grass is just really dry and it didn't bog it down at all. I kind of like, it's really nimble. I'm like impressed with how it felt. It was really kind of, had a good response, a good feel. As far as just riding position, it did kind of beat my knees up a little bit. It's kind of like the difference between riding like a trick bike where you have like some good, you're standing and you have good movement, or if you're riding like a road bike and you're kind of bent over. This kind of has the more of the road bike feel because you're kind of hunched over more. And so when you bend your knees to like stretch your back, you're banging them into this. And that's kind of why they put rubber pads here, but even still, it does kind of beat your legs up a little bit. But honestly, it felt really good. It mowed pretty well. I kind of want to try it in the backyard. Can we go to the backyard? It's pretty nasty. Backyard hasn't been mowed in a very long time. We mow it every once in a while because it's next to our property and it's nice to keep it nice. Wow, come over here. I mean, that's coming up to my waist. And I'm 6 foot tall. I see rabbit poop. There's rabbits up in here. It's gonna be crazy. We're gonna see some stuff. I'm gonna try to mow this. We'll see. It seems like a little abusive, but we're gonna try. We're gonna see what happens. It might bog down and shut off like right away. You know, one thing you can never knock Toro or Exmark for is the quality of cut and just their decks. They have fantastic cuts, both of them, and you know, I'm impressed with the way that mower just cut that front yard. Let's mow this backyard, see what happens. Check it out. Okay, so the short version is, yes, you can mow it. Is it abusive? Definitely. I don't think this is what this mower is made for. This was originally had a mulch kit installed on it, and they've taken the block off plate on the right side. So this is a mulch kit on here. And so really this is way too crazy for a mulch kit. I was wondering why I wasn't discharging very hard on the right side. So originally this had a mulch kit on it and somebody must have just removed the block off plate on the right hand side. So That's why it's not slinging as much grass as it should. Honestly, that little Kohler kicked butt. Kohler, you make a great engine. I love it. Every time I get the remote with one, I'm always impressed with the power. And I'm really impressed with what this thing did. This grass is absolutely ridiculously gnarly and way overgrown. I mean, that's 4.5 feet, 5 feet of grass. So something just to keep in mind. The Exmark Staris, pretty powerful little machine, feels nimble, quick, mows nice, has a really great quality of cut. Is it kind of complicated to work on? Yeah. Is it really compact in there and might drive your mechanic absolutely crazy? Probably. But did Exmark make a machine that cuts like an Exmark or like a Toro? I think they did. And it lives up to that standard. So something to think about. Guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, please like, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you watching. Have a good day.